So let's now roll our sleeves up and get stuck in to the DiSC model itself, what it is, how it works, so that you can really see how you can use it. So the first thing that we'd like you to do is to think about yourself in a particular context in your organisation, a particular role in your organisation. And the reason for that is because the DiSC model is very much a behavioural model, and it's also a contextual model.
So thinking of that context, that role, what we'd like you to do now is ask yourself, when you're in that role, do you tend to show up as more active? And when we say active, we mean a little bit more high energy, a bit more fast-paced, a little bit more action-oriented, or do you tend to be a little more thoughtful? That is a little bit of a slower pace, wanting to be a little bit more thorough, a little bit more time taken before you take action. And by the way, just in terms of your decision, sometimes people are kind of like, oh, I suppose I'm a bit of both. We're just asking about how you tend to show up. So if it was a seesaw between active and thoughtful, which way would it tip most often? That's really, make your decision one way or the other. It might only just tip, or it might be thoroughly tipping in one direction really, really clearly.
So moving on now, same context, same situation, we're going to ask you another question. Would you tend to describe yourself or see yourself showing up as more questioning? And by questioning, I mean more skeptical, more challenging, more logical? Or would you tend to see yourself showing up as more accepting? So by accepting, I mean more go with the flow, more agreeable, more receptive.
So what you've got there is, again, think about the seesaw. If you're unsure about, is it questioning or accepting, it only needs to tip one way or the other most often. Just go with that. So what you've got then is you've made a decision, active or thoughtful, questioning or accepting, and it will allow you to place yourself in one of four quadrants. So if, for example, you chose active and questioning, that puts you in this quadrant, which is the D quadrant. And the D stands for dominance on the DiSC model.
And so the essence of the D style, the dominant style, is very much about getting results, getting things done, getting things out the door, often in a really fast-paced way. So there's a lot of drive, there's a lot of challenge to make things happen.
Now if you chose active and also accepting, then that put you in the I quadrant. I standing on the DiSC model for influence. Now, someone who shows an I style in a particular role, what that means is that they're likely to be really quite enthusiastic. We're going to notice quite a bit of energy, a lot of optimism, very people focused, very relationship focused. And again, at a fast kind of pace, they really do like things to be moving, they like things to be happening. So, really people oriented, they're like life and soul of the party, if you like, really light up an office with their energy.
Yeah, so you'll see a lot of sociability and probably a lot of talking. So if we move on then, if you chose accepting and thoughtful, that's going to put you in the S quadrant, standing for steadiness. And the essence of the steadiness style, it's very much about people, it's very much about creating harmony, wanting people to get on, liking predictability, so liking to know what's going to come round the corner, and often working in quite a methodical way.
Actually, they're often referred to as almost like the glue that holds a team together. Really, really important role there. So if someone was to have said thoughtful and questioning, maybe you chose those two, it would put you in this quadrant here, which is the C quadrant. C on the DiSC model standing for conscientiousness. Now the conscientious style, very much about dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Quality is really, really important. Accuracy, really, really important. Getting things right, that's the essence of the C style. It really, really matters that we get things right. They may sometimes be a little bit reserved. What they're really interested in is logically making things stack up and making things so that they are fit for purpose, and we've attended to all the detail.
So what you've done now is you've plotted yourself on the DiSC model, and you also probably started to bring to mind other people that you work with and started to think about, where are they on the DiSC model? Are they in the same quadrant as me? Are they in a different quadrant than me? Are they in a completely opposite quadrant than me? Now, the important thing to say here is there are no good or bad styles. Every style is perfectly valid and valuable. There's only the right style for the situation or for the person that you're looking to connect better with. So we're going to have a little look at some of the kind of relationship issues that often come up when we're using the DiSC model, and look at how it is that DiSC is able to really help people to resolve those relationship issues, so that they have a common language to be able to discuss them, and so that they understand better how to meet each other's needs. Because the purpose of the DiSC model is about bringing self-awareness, and very importantly, signposting people to help them to understand what they need to do differently in order to build better connections.
So very practical, it's really about practical application in the workplace. Tangible results is what really this is designed for. And there's something really quite interesting about all of those different quadrants being very valid and useful styles. In fact, every team really should have the bases covered, if you like, with some people with D style, some with I, some S and some C, for it to be a really good rounded team. Equally, some of the most effective individuals are those who are successfully flexing their style. So even though they may have their own particular preferred style, they'll be flexing around the model and actually showing up able to meet the needs of people in all those different quadrants. So now we know that each of the styles has great validity, great strengths to bring to any team, to any situation, to any kind of work context. Let's have a look at where potential issues can arise. What we've noticed, and certainly what the research absolutely validates, is that those people who are in adjacent quadrants, so D and I, D and C as an example of adjacent quadrants, they tend to have a lot more in common than those that are diagonally opposite. So a D style and an S style are diagonally opposite, an I style and a C style are diagonally opposite. So they've got less in common, and there is potential there for perceptions to get in the way of really effective connection.
So let's just have a look at one of those diagonals, say the D and the S. Let's just imagine now that we're in the D style. We're doing that dominant style, very much about getting results, getting things out the door, often in quite a fast-paced way, wanting to make decisions, wanting things to move on. Just imagine how that other style, that opposite style, might be perceived by that D style. Often people say, yeah, it's frustrating, for goodness sake, make a decision, move forwards, can't you quicken up? Because the pace is so different, because the D style is very much about results orientation, whereas the S style is much more about keeping an order to things, and also keeping people happy.
Keeping that harmony alive. Now, let's just take that opposite perspective now. Imagine that we are doing an S style. So, we've got that harmony in mind. We want to think things through before we embrace any kind of change. Nice and steady. Let's take people with us. And we are interacting with someone who's doing, a full-on D style. It's like, come on, let's get it out the door. Let's make things happen. Let's get those results. How might it be perceived by, someone in the S style? Well, the regular things that we hear are, crikey, I feel like I'm being bulldozed into things. I feel like I'm being pushed around. I feel like, it's just too much too soon. It feels like I'm almost being bullied at times. And that's a perception that can be really quite strong from an S perspective when interacting with someone doing a high D style. Remember, we've been using the word here perceptions because so much of this is about perception. Well, we need to understand people's perceptions if we're really going to connect and influence and operate effectively with other people.
So let's have a look at the other diagonals now. Let's have a look at the I and the C. Now, just imagine that somebody's doing that I style, which is very much about a big picture. It's about sociability, it's about fun and energy and optimism. Yes, we can do this. Just imagine that they are on a regular basis interacting with or even managing somebody who's doing that C style. That C style, which is very much more cautious, much more attention to detail. Just imagine how that would feel from an I perspective, or how that could feel. And often people doing that I style in that kind of context would say, oh goodness me, do you have to be so negative? Do you have to be so nitpicking? Do we really have to go over that again, for heaven's sake? So that can be very frustrating from the I point of view.
And of course, there's no right or wrong about this. It's a lot of perception here, and we know that perception is really, really important. So from the C style, if we're operating in a C style and we're interacting with the person in the I style, and they're doing their enthusiasm, they're lively, they're wanting to keep fun alive in the day-to-day activities, energetically moving forward, optimism absolutely oozing from them, and we're putting a lot of emphasis on getting things right. Making sure that the quality is at its highest, that before we take any kind of action, we've checked and we've double-checked, we've dotted the I's and crossed the T's. It can actually be quite a scary place for someone in the C style interacting with someone in the I. It's almost like they haven't thought this through. They're bouncing us forward here enthusiastically and energetically. They haven't looked around the corner. They don't know what's coming. They haven't thought it through properly. They're going to lead us over Niagara Falls here if we're not careful. So it's like, wow, just slow down a minute. Let's just make sure we got the quality. Let's just take a second to look and check. And that's, again, it can be a frustrating kind of place for someone in the C style to be experiencing that high energy approach from the I.
So the DiSC model can really help in those kinds of contexts, people to understand what it is that they need to do differently in order to manage that situation more effectively.
I mean, even in fact, just having the awareness about, what's driving, these different people in the different quadrants, what's driving their behaviour, what's driving the way that they show up. It can just allow people to understand better and be more forgiving, I suppose, of difference, and to be able to look at the strengths within that and to know how to operate in a way that we're using the best of what everyone's bringing to the table. So we've talked about the diagonal opposites and how significant difference can lead to perceptions that might sometimes get in the way of really good relationships, of course, until we know about the DiSC model. And there is another area where there may be potential problems, and that is where two people are doing the D style. Now we might think, well, they're similar style, they've got a lot in common. Of course that's true. If you think about the D style though, they're both wanting to be in charge, they're both going to want to drive things, they're both going to want to do things their way. And that can sometimes lead to a little bit of head clashing from time to time. So again, it's just an area where increased awareness allows us one or both to do some flexing that allows the whole thing to work more smoothly.